Today I'm going to react to some of the latest industry news, which is that the serialization app Radish, which is mostly romance, is closing down this year. This is on the heels of Amazon's Kindle Vella shutting down, and there's also been something called the Yonder app, which I think a lot of money was poured into. There's been a whole bunch of I'd say like monetization grabs, and I think a lot of that was inspired or on the heels of Wattpad and Royal Road, two of the biggest serialization sites and apps. I know that careers have kind of risen and fallen through the Dream Me app and a few others. I know Inkit has one called Galatea, and there's just been all kinds of attempts at serialization, monetization. Some of them have been successful, some have not. I'd say that the vast majority of kind of like the big mainstream ones that people have heard of are mostly focused on romance. I'm not a romance author. I probably don't have a whole lot of room to talk about the romance angle of these sort of things. But even from the beginning of the internet, I'd say like 1990s era, there were sites like Elfwood and Royal Rodel, which was the original Royal Road, things like that, where people were serializing fantasy and science fiction. Most people probably are aware that some of the big best-selling indie authors like Andy Weir and Hugh Howey both kind of did some serialization early on. I know that Michael J. Sullivan, the author of the Rhaenyra series, had a Wattpad following at some point. And of course, more recently, Matt Deneman with Dungeon Crawler Carl. He had a large following where he kind of got his start on Royal Road. I actually keep an ongoing list, an updated list of serialization sites that I run across or hear about and information about them. And I do have a public-facing version of that list, which is a little bit less up-to-date, which is just on my website, abbygoldsmith.com/serialization. Because I'm really interested in this space, it has so much potential. Part of the fun of serialization is that you've got an engaged audience that's coming back every week, and they're leaving comments on every chapter. I wouldn't say that it's like highly critical beta readers. It doesn't really replace that sort of thing. But being an author can be isolating. And I think, there's two kinds of authors, right? There's like story crafters and prose crafters. Like there's people that are here to tell a story, to make you care about the characters, to get you really engaged into something addictive, an addictive ongoing epic. And there are people that are more into kind of short format or into the beauty of prose. And those don't necessarily all overlap at the same time. So serialization is not for everyone. The readership that goes for serials, again, I'm not going to talk about the romance angle of this because I do not know it very well. But for fantasy, sci-fi, a lot of them are coming from manga and light novels, like Japanese light novels, or Chinese wuxia, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, cultivation sagas. A lot of it is about power progression, where somebody goes from like a nobody to a very powerful person in the world. That's something that I like to read, and I think a lot of other readers do as well. And watching the journey of the person becoming more powerful is something people can get addicted to, especially if there's like a large and colorful cast of characters around them. And readers of serials are not necessarily looking for standalones or something small. They are looking for something they can be immersed in and come back to every week for years, sometimes. Like I know in my case, there's a bunch of series I'm looking forward to the next book, which will come out whenever the author has it out. I think that even mainstream readers have some of this. There are people that I think will snatch up the next Game of Thrones, Song of Fire and Ice series by George R. R. Martin, if he ever finishes it, which we all know, that's not a certain thing. But as mainstream publishers are kind of increasingly moving away from long, addictive series, I do think readers are diving into the web serial world, the serialization frontier, looking for addictive stories like that are ongoing. Obviously, I do not work for any of these serial sites. I have serialized on Wattpad. I did that for about 7 years. I became a Wattpad star. And this was all with writing something that wasn't romance in the slightest. I noticed on there I got like kind of a half female, half male, half undisclosed audience. So it was something like 40%, 40%, and 10%. And on Wattpad, that is very unusual because it's mostly female readers on there. I posted a chapter or two every week for about 7 years on Wattpad, and I had a great audience. It was a lot of fun, and I'd heard a lot of good things about Royal Road, so I relaunched my entire series on there, and I serialized it all over a period of about 18 months on Royal Road. Those are the two platforms I have the most experience with. There are a lot of warnings about web novel. They say they have predatory contracts. I haven't tried them. There's a bunch of others I'm looking at. There's also even subreddits that are dedicated to serials. One of the main ones is a subreddit called HFY. My big epic sci-fi series would have done well there, but once I had already had a number of the volumes, a number of chapters out on Royal Road, it was kind of hard to launch it elsewhere because people could just read ahead elsewhere. Part of the fun of being a serial reader is that you're reading alongside everyone else, and most people aren't reading ahead, or if they do, they're paying to do so via a Patreon subscription. It's interesting to me to see how many startups are attempting this. Even well-funded startups are trying to get into the serialization space. It keeps happening. I think maybe the main gold rush is over a little bit now, but even just browsing Reddit, I see people starting up serialization sites or apps, probably 2 or 3 per year, and that's just through me hearing it through the grapevine, so I'm sure there are like 100 more that I haven't heard about. I do think that one of the big pitfalls a lot of them fall into is that they try to monetize too soon, and they don't really focus on a growing readership. So for instance, Kindle Vella relied on the authors to bring their own audiences, which I think was a terrible mistake. It isn't that authors don't have audiences, but the fact is that if it's an author that already has a large inbuilt audience, they don't need that app. They don't need to be on it. It's possible that they'll send their readers there just to farm extra money, but then you've got like a kind of very mercenary type of author that's attracted to that app, and it doesn't leave much room for growth. It leaves very little room for discoverability of new authors or for new, fresh content, and readers are going to get tired of the same old, especially when they're binge readers that get addicted easily to things. They want new, they want to find new gems in the pile. If the readers flooding onto the platform are just hardcore fans of one particular author, then they're there for just that one author. They're not looking for something new, and they're going to leave as soon as they've read that one new author. So there's nothing in it for lesser known or new authors. There's nothing in it for kind of more adventurous readers. The major strengths, I think, that both Wattpad and Royal Road have had during their first 15 years of their existence, they were very welcoming and friendly to readers. Wattpad used to have a forum. Royal Road still has a forum. The comment section is always kind of a hoot, and there's a lot of people commenting. Overall, these apps are easy to use, and there's a fun atmosphere. There's no sense that the app or the company behind it is trying to nickel and dime the readership. I do think that's changed a bit with Wattpad in the last few years, but it hasn't changed yet with Royal Road. But I think that when an app tries to start playing monetization games with the readership, they tend to drive away the readers. And really, that's the strength of these platforms. That is 100% what they need. That's the backbone. If you don't have a good readership, a strong readership that's coming there, not just for one particular author, but to discover new things. If you don't have that, you don't have an app that's going to stick around for more than a few years. Radish lasted kind of a lot longer than I expected it to. Kindle Vella did not. It lasted about as long as I thought it might. It's hard to guess what goes on behind closed doors and meetings with the executives of these companies. No idea. Royal Road seems to still have a very small crew running it. I hope that they maintain the fun atmosphere that they began with. There's a few signs that they're capitulating to some, I think, economic forces that might end up taking the app down a notch. There's certainly room for competition in the space. Wattpad, unfortunately, I believe has peaked. It was a great app for a very long time. I had a good time on it. I hope that they recover or do something that brings back a lot of the fun authors and the fun readers they used to have. I still think that they're going strong in a lot of ways, but again, Wattpad has leaned heavily towards romance, and that's what they're leaning into. I'm still invested in the serialization frontier, and I'm gearing up to launch another web serial on Royal Road, but I do plan to cross-post it to other places to see what kind of traction it might get elsewhere. If you're a serial author or thinking about becoming one, feel free to drop me a line, and I am probably going to make a few more videos specifically about Royal Road or Wattpad and things like that. So, my name is Abby Goldsmith. I'm Abby Babel on Wattpad and Royal Road.